Hello, welcome to this match. I'm doing commentary for Jakkdl versus Caetra. This is in the medium games tournament, which means both players have about medium ratings. You can look up online what the exact meaning of those numbers are in terms of Glicko rankings and Mew. But both these players are trying to get better and learn the game. I think they both told me this is the first time they've had a match commentated, so hopefully I will find areas of improvement as well as good plays for both players. Right away, one's eyes are drawn to Silk Merchant and Recruiter as being very powerful cards. I think the 5/2 here is really, really good. To be able to get that Recruiter up and going pretty quickly. Jakkdl opens with Lookout Silk Merchant, which I think that makes sense. You want to thin the coppers, and Recruiter's not great at thinning coppers, so that's definitely something that you can do. For this kind of kingdom, I really often will just see Recruiter, Silk Merchant, and start clicking on those before thinking too much. Notably speaking, we have Fair. You probably want to get a Fair. Silk Merchant has plus buy, so maybe you don't need to get Fair. Recruiter probably will have enough food forever. So probably you pick up Recruiter, some Silk Merchants, and then a Soothsayer. You can always trash the golds to your Recruiter for a whole bunch of villagers. That's 6 villagers. And then that'll let you play the Soothsayer and 4 Silk Merchants, right? And then maybe you get a couple of Wandering Minstrels along the way to help you cycle. The Lookout can thin most of your coppers, and then you can go ahead and trash that as well. A little bit of an unfortunate draw there for Jakkdl to draw all these estates together. So looking at this, Caetra opens Recruiter, Soothsayer. Again, that's a little bit of a high roll draw with a 5/5. I kind of would have preferred 4/3, but Recruiter, Soothsayer, they were just able to trash and didn't buy anything. So decent start here. I think they do need Silk Merchant for the draw. Jakkdl opens Lookout Silk Merchant, then is able to get their Recruiter, gets another Lookout. The second Lookout feels a little bit unnecessary. You're going to be playing Recruiter so many times over the course of this game. I would even consider getting a second Recruiter as both players. I might have even gotten a second Recruiter before the Soothsayer. I'd have to think about that a little bit more. But in terms of the Recruiter is drawing you cards, it's cycling through your deck, and you're getting rid of your estates. And that'll give you 6 villagers along the way to play either your other Recruiter or your Soothsayer. If need be, you can trash Silk Merchants with your Recruiter. I think you can also try to get to 5 to hit a trade once or twice, just to get a little bit more payload into the deck, although perhaps Soothsayers adding golds is all that you will need. So my final deck state is going to look like a couple of Recruiters, a Soothsayer, a couple of Silk Merchants, a couple of Wandering Minstrels, and a bunch of golds. And probably still a few coppers sitting around. Like, that doesn't seem super problematic to have a few coppers still around with the extra draw from Recruiter and Silk Merchant, and you're sifting a little bit with the Wandering Minstrel. When I say sifting, I mean it's keeping your actions on top and getting rid of your treasures and greens, which is generally what you want to do in Dominion. You want to play with these action cards. And then we can start to province when we're getting close to that point, which could be turn like 11 or 12. Maybe a little bit earlier. So Jakkdl is going to get ahead on thinning fairly quickly here. Discard this copper. Keep the estate on top. So you can trash that with Lookout. A little bit unfortunate that Jakkdl was not able to find a estate with their Recruiter here. So they're somewhat behind in terms of their number Soothsayer, although they are going to be thinner eventually. We'll see if Caetra can catch up on the thinning before that advantage comes to play. Yep, they top deck the estate, so they can now trash the estate, keep the Silk Merchant on top. In terms of tactics, there are times when you would trash this Silk Merchant for a Lookout. Like if you had 7 money in hand and no coffers, you could trash the Silk Merchant to get the coffer to let you buy the last province. Obviously, that's not coming up on turn 6. You're going to keep that Silk Merchant for a while, but useful to note. Probably a Chariot Race is okay here, especially with the double Lookouts. There's a chance they can line the Chariot Race up The Coffer's not doing a whole lot for them. Wandering Minstrel also lets you line Chariot Races up. And it draws a card, so it's probably on average going to be a little bit worse than Silver and Money. Well, probably a bit worse than Silver and Money, but it moves you through the deck, and when it does hit, it'll be nice. Caetra, I think, really needs to get their second recruiter here. A little bit of thought to trading, but I think they just need more draw, more trashing to get the second recruiter going. And if you end up, trashing a copper half the time, and 2/3 of the time in a gold, 2/3 of the time you're in good shape. So they follow that, which is nice. Jakkdl did that right. They played the Silk Merchant first to draw through the deck to have a bigger search space to find the estates. You have 2 lookouts, estate, copper down there. I think you want to draw here. I know you end up spending 2 villagers, but you really want to try to find that last. Well, you can buy a Soothsayer here anyways, but you really want to get through this shuffle because that's not a great 4-card starting hand unless you find one of these 3 of 8 cards as the 5th card. Or, if you buy a Soothsayer 4 of 9. So yeah, now they can trash both. Actually, the way Lookout works, if you only reveal 1 card, you trash it. It's a little bit of a confusing interaction. But yeah, if you only look at 1, you have to trash the first one. Then if you only look at 2, you trash this card. So they can trash this last copper, buy a Soothsayer, and then they'll be on their way as well. They can look to trash their lookouts next turn, or the turn after. Probably they play this first lookout. So Caetra's gotten rid of the last estate, which is good. I think with 2 villagers, you can save your goals. I'd look to pick up here Wandering Minstrel, Silk Merchant, Chariot Race, perhaps. Not quite sure what you do with the 3rd buy. You have 2 money, so I think you should spend it. I don't think Hireling's any good here. I think 2 recruiters is enough. They got the Lookout. I think they're going to have plenty of trashing with the 2 recruiters. I don't think they're going to have any problem trashing or drawing through their deck. Wandering Minstrel will put the coppers into the discard, so if you play the Lookout at the end of the turn, it works out nicely. But I guess you'll be having some curses in their recruiter, so maybe it makes sense to get the Lookout to keep with their Soothsayer will give you curses. So that makes some sense. Here I think you trash the copper, toss the Silk Merchant, and then play the recruiter to trash an estate. Actually, and then you can play the Lookout to trash the curse. Or you can play the Soothsayer first and then play the Lookout to draw the gold and trash the curse. That seems pretty nice. They are looking to be going to be a little bit low on villagers here, only having one recruiter. So I mentioned fair at the beginning. It's a plus buy, but you'll just have enough Silk Merchants in hand that you'll have enough plus buys for the whole game. Trade does not actually thin cards, right? Your deck is the same size after you finish playing trade, but it increases the money density of your deck. So it's at least possible you play it once or twice, but I think we're actually past the point. I think if you happen to spike 5 coppers, 2 estates, no, because you really want to play recruiter to trash those estates. So probably you never end up doing that. As soon as you can trash that, you can play draw. You are out of villagers here, so probably I think Jack needs a second recruiter at this point in the game. That seems like the best way. You've got lookouts to thin coppers. You don't yet want to thin the gold. They got a minstrel, which has similar effects, I suppose. I'm just looking. I want to trash 2 lookouts, 3 coppers, and a couple of curses. So like lookout value, lookouts get much, much worse the better your deck gets. And I think Yeah, that's not a trivial decision as to what's top deck there. I'm not 100% sure which one I would pick. I think either has their arguments, so I won't judge that play really. So yeah, I think the way this tournament played out, you wanted to recruit a gold, but it is what it is. They've got a recruiter on top. So again, they've got 10, 12. I'd be looking at Wandering Minstrel. I think again, like Wandering Minstrel, I think they have enough Silk Merchants, so this could just be double Wandering Minstrel Chariot Race. Again, the Chariot Race is nice with the Wandering Minstrel top decking, so you can make sure there's a 5 cost on top a lot of the time. Recruiter Soothsayer, or one of the 4 costs, would be at least decent chance of winning the Chariot Race. They do have a lot of coppers to trash. They do have a second recruiter. So ideally, you'll be trashing 1 gold, 1 curse with recruiter, and then 1 copper with lookout, and then you're gonna be thin. I got another Silk Merchant. I originally considered that. I feel like they have enough of those at this point, but we'll see how this next turn plays out. I think the extra village will, because last turn they could have, they weren't quite drawing deck, so they need a little bit more draw to draw deck. And in my line, 2 Wandering Minstrel Chariot Race didn't actually net draw you anything. It did cycle a little bit, so you could play the lookout at the end of the shuffle, potentially. Yes, they were able to trash a lookout there, which is nice. Play a lookout to trash a curse. So the problem with that is they're sort of net neutral on trash. They didn't thin their deck at all, because the lookout was kind of a dead card in the deck. I guess, they had bought the lookout, so they still have the same number of coppers and other cards. And they did get rid of the curse. So in terms of this game, I think I want Jakkdl to have a little bit more trashing. But I think at this point you can't add another recruiter. I think you need to be adding payload type cards. So with 9, that could be Wandering Minstrel Silk Merchant. And then next turn you'll have 11 or 12. You're adding a couple of payload each turn with Soothsayer, losing a little bit when you trash money with recruiter. So there's a lot of trade-offs here. I can even see a little bit, if you get the build really optimized and clean. I'm not sure that I could do that, but seeing getting a second Soothsayer along with the recruiters, just throw those curses faster, grab a couple golds a turn, and you can be adding 4 to 6 payload a turn as opposed to 2 to 3 as it is currently, and then just grabbing with all your money after that all the Silks and Wandering Minstrels, and that should enable you to have a deck that's like 5 Wandering Minstrels, 5 Silk Merchants, 2 recruiters, 2 Soothsayers, and like 10 golds. You can do the math that will draw. Recruiters actually need something to trash, so you probably end up trashing one of those recruiters to itself along the way, and then double promising once you have 6 golds. I mean, you don't really need more than 6 golds in this deck. Could even be 5 golds and a copper if you save 1, but I think we're past the point where I want a second Soothsayer. I don't know if that's true. I mean, the curses are low, so the second Soothsayer is less valuable, and I think we need to be adding draw and village effect still. So they're playing the lookout first. You're always leaving this Silk Merchant on top. You've got plenty of golds in the deck. Yeah, and here I do not like that play. They should have trashed the gold there. Now their turn is over. If they trash the gold, they get a whole other turn. They get to play their Soothsayer. They get the gold back by playing the Soothsayer later in the shuffle. You could also trash a Silk Merchant that gives you another villager, and so on. But I think that was, specifically speaking, not optimal. So don't play this lookout knowing that you have 2 Wandering Minstrels on top. Play the Silk Merchant, obviously. This is nice. They're going to be able to draw through the deck. And what I mentioned with the Chariot Race was you can pretty reliably get a 5 cost on top. And since your opponent's deck has a couple golds, maybe the Chariot isn't the worst for Jack because Caetra's got the golds already. But you could get a 5-cost on top pretty reliably. So here you're going to play the Lookout soon. I think you just take the Soothsayer on top and draw that. First, you really want to be able to play the Lookout here to trash the copper, and then play the Soothsayer to gain gold, and then draw the gold with Recruiter and trash. I think you could probably trash the copper at this point. Because Caetra didn't get the gold going last turn of the Soothsayer play, there's not an extra curse in the deck. So I think, yeah, you can trash. You're ending with 1 villager, which is probably enough for 3 villages in the deck. So this is the spot I considered earlier where maybe adding the second suits, like Soothsayer, Silk Merchant. I know you're loading up a lot of terminals, but you can plan on trashing one of the golds to Recruiter. And that will enable you to add 2 golds, give 2 curses next turn. And you can start double provincing, and then potentially this is turn 10, so you can start double provincing potentially turn 12. Having some amount of silks seems good. I like... Oh, for pile pressure, okay. I still like having a second recruiter, but again, it feels like we're past the point we want to be buying recruiters. I think I want like multiples of everything. I want 2 recruiters, 2 soothsayers, and then 5 each of Silk Merchants and Wandering Minstrels is my deck state. They haven't quite gained full control of the decks yet. This is the first turn where Jakkdl has done it, and Caetra's had 1 or 2 turns. I want to be like gaining and playing golds every turn, and ramping up the payload. But from what you're saying, I understand like the Silk Merchant pile is quite low, the Wandering Minstrel pile is quite low, the Curse pile is going to be gone in 2 turns. So it is important to just watch that there's these 2 piles. The Chariot races, as I mentioned earlier, are not quite as good for Jakkdl, because Caetra's got more 5 costs and 6 costs, but we'll see. And unfortunately, I have to play this Chariot race absent Wandering Minstrel to inspect the top card. This other thing is your Wandering Minstrel is going to discard your golds, so that does make it a little bit awkward, this build. And there are no golds in the trash, which is really surprising to me. I would have definitely been trashing a gold or so just to give me more villagers, and that lets you add more Silk Merchants without adding all the Wandering Minstrels. I still want 1 or 2 Wandering Minstrels, I guess, but maybe in the build I'm talking about, you actually don't need even number of Wandering Minstrels. You can have, 2 Wandering Minstrels and 5 or 6 Silk Merchants. Yeah, and as JCK says, like if I'm trashing a gold with Recruiter, I have plenty of villagers for this turn and next turn, and then maybe next turn I don't need to trash a gold. So the cost of a little bit of money this turn potentially saves the turns you have where you draw. I know Caetra had one a couple turns ago where they drew a bunch of Silk Merchants and no villages and had no villagers. So yeah, with the Soothsayer on top, there's not much you can do here. I think you just play the Chariot races to start and realize you're not going to win any this turn. You could be very risky and play the Lookout. Try to get to the end of the shuffle, play the Lookout at the end of the shuffle when you know you can top deck a gold. I think you're more concerned at this point with just playing through your deck, making sure you draw and do the stuff you need to do. There's a Recruiter down there, so you can play the Wandering Minstrel. The Recruiter is in hand now. Yeah, and so now you can play the Soothsayer, and then the Lookout, and then the Chariot race and guarantee a hit. And you can guarantee trash either a copper or a curse, so that'll be good. I'm surprised they didn't play the Soothsayer first, but they have enough draw, it looks like. And this is like the ideal scenario. You're able to play the Soothsayer and gain the gold the same turn. I would consider recruiting something. I don't know if I want to recruit the Silk Merchant at this point. You've got 14 money, so you have to decide here what you want to do. You've got 13 hard money, 13 or 14 hard money in a coffer. So you've got 13 to 15 money, and you can decide what you want to buy this turn. You're going to add 3 money next turn, so if you just need to save 1, but you can double province next turn pretty easily if you trash this copper, regardless of what you buy. So it's just a question of how are we getting to our end state here. I would consider trashing this copper and with 13 money buying a province and a Silk Merchant, with the idea that you've got a VP lead, and if your opponent doesn't contest the VP lead, then you will pile out Silk Merchants and Wandering Minstrels next turn, which is exactly how much money you'll have. With 5 golds and 1 coffer is 16 money, so that's enough to pile the two remaining Silk Merchants and 2 remaining Minstrels. I guess your opponent could win a couple of chariot races, but that would require them still buying a province, trashing a copper, winning 2 chariot races, buying a province, and spending 16 to buy Wandering Minstrels and Silk Merchants. The other thing, it is difficult sometimes in Dominion to note, I'm looking at the 10 Kingdom cards, and there's only 2 low piles, right? You have to look over at the supply cards and realize that Curse is at 1, and, Caetra's almost always going to play a Silk Merchant next turn, so the curses are going to be gone. So the game is going to end, potentially next turn. Unless, Jakkdl provinces, then Caetra double provinces, then it gets into a back and forth, which is complex, but at least then Jakkdl will have, the extra Silk Merchant, they'll have an extra coffer, and they'll be able to double province themselves. And the way, they could double province themselves, then they'll have a 3-2 province lead with 2 provinces left. With 3 provinces left, and is in a pretty commanding position. Even though I feel like Caetra's deck is a little bit better, there is a little bit of value to being the first one to go here. So they spent a coffer and declined to trash in order to get the extra chariot race. I don't think they're going to be reliably winning the chariot races to make that worth it. I think I would rather have the coffer and the fewer copper, but we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. So here they can try to do the top deck setup trick. They've got a recruiter on top, which is probably as good as you will do. I would go with the chariot race now. So Jay has a chariot race on top. So Caetra's got the 2 hits. And it looks like what I had thought might happen is going to happen, which is they could have played that Soothsayer first. I guess not. They're a little bit short on draw here, if we look. They were just barely drawing through deck there. They did trash 1, and they played a recruiter earlier and trashed 2. Trashed the Lookout. Once they play the Soothsayer, and if they buy 2 provinces, which I assume they will, it is going to be difficult for them to draw next turn. It'll be a little bit difficult for them to draw next turn. I really wish by this point of the game we'd have gotten rid of all the coppers. So maybe Jakkdl went for double Lookout Recruiter. Caetra went for double Recruiter Delayed Lookout. I think I might have gone early double Recruiter, early Lookout. Just try to get all the way thin. And there is 1 silk in the trash. So yeah, winning here is 16 money plus 8, which is 24 money. So but they need 1 buy. So they are 1 buy short of that line and 1 money short in that case as well. But if Jakkdl did not buy a province last turn, then this is a fairly easy win for Caetra. So that's good. I assume this is double province. It's hard to lower either of the 2 key piles here, so chariot race makes good sense to me. And they're ending with 3 coffers, which is really, really nice because they're threatening to triple next turn. So Jakkdl can't really double province here if Caetra can triple, which they just showed that they could, because they had, they're going to have 2 more golds in deck next turn if they draw. So the gold gets chucked, but you get the Soothsayer on top, and you can play the first Chariot Race to see if you can win that with the Soothsayer. Oh, unlucky. With 2 provinces in deck, Caetra's got 1 on top. So the Chariot Races now you can just play immediately. They're not going to give you any value, unfortunately. And there's no reliable way in this kingdom that I can see to set up a 6-card deck. Yeah, there's no reliable way to top deck something for next turn to be the top to win the Chariot Races. You can top deck for next turn and Lookout, but then you're going to draw those cards. There are some rare kingdoms, and it's, usually when you're drawing deck, it's not possible. But if you're drawing deck, if you're not drawing deck, you can potentially use something like Secret Passage to put the province as the 6th card down, so you have it on top for next turn. I think some people don't like Chariot Race for that reason. It ends up being a bit of a crapshoot in terms of whether you're winning. I think it won't matter in the end that they used a Villager. I think they're going to play all their actions anyways. They can play this Recruiter now to trash the Lookout, play the Soothsayer, play the Silk Merchants. So yeah, play the Soothsayer here, and then play the Recruiter to trash the Lookout. Man, if they'd been deck tracking, which I was not doing, looking at both decks, they should have played their Lookout to trash the Curse actually first. And then they could have recruited a Silk Merchant, because I think 4 buys. Well, having the 5th buy might be nice, but I don't think they're going to have enough money to reliably use it. And notably, Caetra's only got 3 Silk Merchants. They've only got 4 buys as well. So you can potentially buy a Silk Merchant here. Like you could go double province, or like province, duchy, Silk Merchant or something. That feels pretty dangerous though with Chariot Races around. Normally we do the math and we say, okay, here's the maximum number of points my opponent can score next turn with perfect play. But Chariot Race, that is, up to 3 more depending on if they win their Chariot Races. So you have to defensively assume that they win all their Chariot Races to find your optimal line. And it may be that your optimal line says, I can't win without them. I can't win without them missing some Chariot Races, so I'm gonna play risky. I'm a little bit. So they drew a gold and a province, so they need to play Soothsayer and Recruiter here, and they need to recruit the Lookout in order to have a turn next turn. They want to start with Villagers, and they've got a decent chance to trash that Curse. And that would leave them with 16 money in a coffer. It looks like. So, as I said, double province is dangerous. Although Caetra did win 2 Chariot Races last turn, but they didn't spend any 20 money. So they'll have 20. They could have up to 26 money this turn. 27 if they hit their Chariot Races. 24 if they don't hit any Chariot Races. So tripling is well within their possibility. So now we have to do the calculus. Jack, do we double and hope they can't triple? Or do we go province duchy? That puts us at 15. If Caetra triples, they're at 32, which is out of reach, I think. And then hitting a single is going to be fairly easy after that. So I think Jackdal's best line here is to go double province. And then, fingers crossed, they lose their Chariot Races and they can't draw through all their golds. The Wandering Minstrel flips those over into the discard. And I think that's the best line. It's tough, though, like this kind of spot. It feels bad to give your opponent a pile out in their turn, knowingly. But I don't think you can win after doing Province Duchy here. The only way you win after doing Province Duchy here is if Caetra misses triple, essentially. Which is, again, strictly the first line. So Caetra can lead on Wandering Minstrel here. Wow, they led on Chariot Race. That was... and Jay even has a recruiter on top. Leading on Chariot Race was highly questionable, though. Because if you lead on Wandering Minstrel, you can... Oh, they knew Province was on top from the previous turn. Oh, thank you. However, the second one, this recruiter Chariot Race could play feels bad, because this turn is now dudded. If they played Chariot Race, Wandering Minstrel, they would have gotten a Wandering Minstrel on top. They could have played that Wandering Minstrel and then put another. Eventually, I think they would have found a recruiter Silk Merchant. As it is, I don't think they need to be afraid of triple from Jack. So I think they can just buy a duchy, and then if Jack doubles, they can buy Province double duchy next turn. Yeah, so at this point, I think we're playing our minstrels to try to get all the 6 and 8 costs into the discard pile, and then trying to play the Chariot Races at the end of the turn. When you know that you'll have 6 or 8 costs on top. So the discard pile now is 3 golds and a province. It'll be 3 golds and 2 provinces after this. So we're getting to the point I mentioned where we've added enough green cards and they were only kind of just barely drawing deck that, you know, it may be tough to actually draw back around to find all of these green cards. But, you know, you can pretty safely play the Silk Merchant and the Recruiter here with the plan to trash the curse. I no longer care that much about villagers because the game is almost over. And I think you've got another Minstrel and another Silk Merchant down there. Is there another Minstrel down there? I think they have 4. And actually they have 4 Silk Merchants as well. So there's another Silk Merchant down there as well. Okay, they reveal the Minstrel on top. Okay, so now both these Chariot Races are guaranteed to win, which is quite nice. They cannot... Oh, is this win in hand? If they play Silk Merchant, they can buy 2 Wandering Minstrels and 2 Silk Merchants and win the game. They have exactly the amount of money in hand, it looks like. Am I counting that right, Specs? I believe they have a win on the Silk Merchant and Wandering Minstrel pile now. Yeah, so they have exactly 16 money. I don't think they need to play the Soothsayer. Earlier I was talking about getting like a second Soothsayer and then recruiting golds in a thinner build. But, you know, they've built a pretty nice engine here. It's pretty close to what I was thinking from the beginning the engine would look like. It looks like they see it, and they do. So, very nice spot from Jackdl. A little bit of an unlucky draw from Caetra, although I think they could have potentially avoided it with play over difference. And the first game goes to Jack. And I will join you momentarily for game 2.